The following podcast is for Danny Elfman only.
You make me want to slam my head against the wall. You make me do the...
Matt, we are back with another episode off of Even Worse.
Yeah.
We are talking about what we have found is a bit of a divisive track. It is either people's least favorite Al song or like top 5 Al songs, and you found us a great guest.
I found an amazing guest. I went digging through my contacts list and I found one of my oldest friends in the world. I have known this person since we were in, I guess technically even like goes back to like middle school, but we became friends in high school, but we've known each other ever since. We've played in bands together. A wonderful musician who goes by C. Philip Zarina, who I think we're just going to call Phil from now on. But C. Philip Zarina, welcome to the show.
For the rest of my days. Thank you for having me, guys. That's more intro than I deserve.
Oh, come on. Stop that.
I think I technically met you when I was in second grade, Matthew.
See, it's crazy. Phil's a little bit younger than me, so he actually initially was good friends with my younger brother. But then it turned out they had nothing in common, and we had a lot in common. So, you know, it's one of those things where as you get older, those age differences don't really matter anymore. There was certainly a period where I was like, I'm not talking to this little kid. But
I have had that with some of my little brother's friends too.
Yeah, there you go, right?
My brother moved to Georgia and I still hang out with some of
see,
his
it's funny how that happens. I love that.
Phil, this is, like I said in the beginning, I've heard people talk about how they absolutely hate this song. It's the song that they're most likely to skip on Even Worse. And then there's other people who really consider this, you know, in the same breath as like a Dare to Be Stupid on just like knocking it out of the park on the style parody, completely getting the entire Oingo Boingo vibe and just being a masterpiece. What led you to decide that this was the song you wanted us to talk about this week?
So yeah, for me, it's one of those top 5 Dare to Be Stupid level, life-changing, perfect Al songs. And it was also part of how, when I was younger, I mean, when I was in elementary school, I was such a Weird Al kid. And I kind of went through... I wonder if other guests have talked about this, or if you guys have talked about this. You go through a teenage phase where, like, I'm too cool for that silly thing, and then you end up circling back to it once you're like, oh no, it was good taste. I had to be into Weird Al, not bad. And this was part of that, though, because I went through exactly that. You know, I had my Weird Al years as a child, and then at some point I realized I was way too cool and way too serious about music. At the age of 11 or 12, I was going to listen to serious artists like the Foo Fighters, and but then you start off listening to the Foo Fighters, and then you end up listening to Queens of the Stone Age because of it, and so forth and so on, until you start going backward into cooler, and you develop your own taste. And a couple of the bands that by the time I was in 8th or 9th grade, I was really getting into were bands like the Talking Heads or Oingo Boingo, and I had this weird moment with those two and with Elvis Costello and Devo, where I went, wait, all of the bands that I like most are the bands that I heard Weird Al do style parodies of when I thought those were just his originals, because I didn't understand what a style parody was when I was 9.
Yeah.
I knew Eat It was a parody, and I thought anything that wasn't a parody was just Weird Al writing a song, that's it. Holy shit, at some point when I was 16, 17, and had that realization, and this was like the center focal point of that.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I think we haven't touched on it a ton, but a little bit. The idea of, I had said before as well, like being into Al at a young age, and Bad Hair Day was like this big, incredibly important record for me at a young age. We've also talked before about how for a huge number of years, it's like there was no 10-year-old boy in the world who didn't go through a Weird Al phase of some kind, because it was just such a thing. Yeah, I had the same experience and stepped away, and then became like a huge fan of bands like They Might Be Giants, and then traced the lineage back, and suddenly it's like, did Al just put all this, like, is everything that I know through Al's inception of his taste through these records. It is a crazy thing to think about.
With this particular song, this was definitely one that I didn't... When I bought the Even Worse cassette tape originally, it was pretty much just the parodies for me. I would skip past all of the originals, had very little interest in it. And it wasn't until I was listening to... I'd just gotten into podcasting, and one of the early shows that I started listening to was Comedy Death Ray, which later became Comedy Bang Bang with Scott Aukerman.
Yeah.
And on that show, not only would he do these goofy guests, but he would play songs in between segments. And they would always be very like Dr. Demento style. It was a huge Dr. Demento throwback. And I forget who the guest was, but they were like, I'm going to play my favorite Weird Al song. And they played You Make Me. And then they had like a good 10, 15-minute conversation about like the brilliance of that song. And it made me kind of go back to the entire Even Worse record, because I was like, I think I'm missing a lot in my brain for this guy's career. And that was probably the biggest moment where I got fully immersed back into the world of Weird Al was through rehearing You Make Me for the first time when I was in college. There's so much to analyze in this song.
Yeah.
And to a certain point, yes, the lyrics. Al has jokingly said this is the closest thing to a love song he's ever written.
I love that. I love that line a lot, because it does make as completely nonsensical. And it was funny because we were talking about another song on this record we already talked about, which was the Stuck in a Closet with Vanna White, which is every line of that song is nonsense, like, but by design. He's just talking about a dream he's had, it's absurdity, and it's just surrealism. And this song has a lot of that surrealism in it, but if you think about it as through the lens of a love song, which is, what it is supposed to be, like, what it's about the insane feelings and thoughts and emotions you have when you're deeply infatuated with somebody. It's just you go crazy.
But the sounds that he creates on that keyboard throughout this song, like beyond the fact that he absolutely nails the chaos of Oingo Boingo's sound, but like the moment that takes the moment that elevates this song for me is something so weird. It's the synth sound that he uses on what I guess what you could call the pre-chorus. It's the line that he sings before the You Make Me's in each verse. But the one I would...
There's really something kind of strange about you, baby, but I can't
that
exactly seem to put my
theremin
finger on it.
Keyboard
but
sound.
like that part. But there's this like... like keyboard... Yeah, oh my God, that's like what nails it for me. I'm like, that's what like takes this song in my eyes from like a maybe middle of the road Al song to something as tiny as that is like such a specific focus on the type of sounds you would hear in the original artist's music that just elevates it so much higher.
I had a weird journey on this song when Matthew asked me if I wanted to be a guest, and if so, what song I wanted to do. And I think this was my first pick, right, Matthew? I didn't, and I was just lucky that it wasn't taken because everybody hates it. But I chose it because I love it. And then in preparing for this, I was like, let me listen to it a bunch, and let me listen to Oingo Boingo a bunch. And I actually got really critical of it. Like I started I started regretting it a little because I was listening to it in the context of kind of being it with the Oingo Boingo record Only a Lad. And I was like, you know what? These production sounds are actually kind of off. Right. And it has this like throw in a bar of, depending on how you want to think of it, a bar of two or a box thing that's like classic Oingo Boingo across all their records. But yeah.
Some little time signature changes. Yeah, it's like just a little bit progressive and weird and off kilter and strange.
Missing something. And then I realized that it's really Nothing to Fear is the reference point for this. And when I did that, I was going insane for a second. And I was like, why did I think this was good? He tricked me. And I thought it was perfect, but it's not, maybe. And I went as far as to start going like, you know what? Maybe for the podcast, what I should do is I should record my version and nail the sounds that I'm hearing not nailed. Like, why is there a bass guitar here when the reference point would be more of a synth bass sound? You know, all these things. And then I circled back around and was like, oh, I'm just an idiot and Weird Al's smarter than me. And he crushed it. But there's some very specific references, I think, in this song, style-wise, across Nothing to Fear. And you get these like mallet percussion sounds and those anvil sort of percussions that you hear on songs like Gray Matter, which I think is the opener of the record.
Yeah.
Wild Sex has like that anvil clanging thing that we get throughout Al's tribute to it. Throughout like the bass sounds, the overall production sounds, the synth sounds. I think that Jim West crushes it on this because A, it's a super restrained part. He's not playing for huge chunks of it.
Yeah.
And on the solo, he nails the sound and the style of Steve Bartek, who is such a huge part of Oingo Boingo. He's the guy behind the scenes for everything Danny Elfman's done his whole career. All of his film scores, Bartek orchestrates them, like, even though they're his compositions. And they nailed that, too.
Sure, yeah. No, they've stayed close.
But what I like about when he does these type of style parodies, and we talked about this with Devo and Talking Heads already, like the gift of it is, you're right, it's mostly pulled from Nothing to Fear more than any other record, but like Al is so good at, like, I almost feel like this boils down all of it. Like this is like, even in tiny ways, I feel like there's elements of like the Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo still like kind of scattered in this. Like it is just as much as he can do, hey, in 4 minutes can I create a song that sums up a 20-year career of a band.
Exactly.
Like he somehow did it.
And so really quick before we get more down this road, because I want to make sure people know, because I actually think that maybe a part of the reason why this isn't as beloved is because Oingo Boingo is not a band that people know as well at this point in time over the years. Like I feel like Oingo Boingo has faded. And they were very popular for a little while. For people who do not know Oingo Boingo, it was the like sort of post-punk new wave band of the, I guess they started in the late 70s, or Only a Lad came out in 81.
They were, so mid 70s was when they were like the vaudeville act.
Right. Yes.
And like this is
and
the
we
big
have to
thing
talk
I wanna
about the Gong Show and all that stuff too. There's
well,
a
I
lot.
was going to say he references Gong Show in the lyrics.
Yes.
And that's like where they got their big break. Like it's like little shit like that that's huge.
There's a lot of little things here, but big picture, they were a band that had a few reasonably successful records. They did okay, but then the frontman, Danny Elfman, left, and if you don't know the name Danny Elfman, you definitely know his work because he has done like
every Tim Burton thing.
He has done everything Tim Burton. He's a composer now, and he does film scores. He did the theme to The Simpsons, which is maybe the most iconic thing possibly he has made, but he did Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He did Edward Scissorhands, all the, like we said, all the Tim Burton stuff. I did a rundown here. He did like Men in Black. He did the Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. I mean, his resume, he is so much more known now as a composer, and he's like arguably one of the most successful composers of the current age. Recently, he did a little bit of throwback. Oingo Boingo did like as close to a reunion show as they have ever done only a couple years ago. But it tracks. They were, I mean, we've already established that Al had a love of Devo, which he's already covered here, but Oingo Boingo are definitely right there alongside bands like Devo at this point in time as being pop artists who are making radio-friendly music, but who are definitely left of center and doing really weird, interesting things. And as you can hear in this song, even if you don't know Oingo Boingo enough to know the references, all the weird little stylistic stuff that's in this track is very pulled from that band.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah, and the Gong Show thing is this is mandatory. If you are listening to this, this is mandatory viewing, okay? You have to go on YouTube and you have to watch Oingo Boingo on the Gong Show in the, I guess that must have been in the 70s, right?
That was the Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo.
The Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo, I apologize.
So
that was the original name,
the two separations is the Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo was led by Danny Elfman's brother, Richard Elfman.
Yes.
And it was a full, like, vaudeville throwback. It was abstract. It was strange. It sometimes even bordered on, like, shockingly mean-spirited. And Richard Elfman started to want to, him and his other co-founder Matt Brightman wanted to start making films instead. So they were going to make a Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo movie, which they eventually did complete, called Forbidden Zone, which is you will either love it or you will find it disgusting. Like it's one of those two categories.
I have not
It
seen
depends-
that. That's probably something I have to check out.
It is throwback to vaudeville in every single essence, and I will stress that.
Yeah.
Meaning that there will be blackface. There will be. It is every aspect
Wow.
of vaudeville
Okay.
in a like trippy sci-fi horror
Yeah.
movie. It's wild.
But it has all that like Cab Calloway
Yeah.
sort of throwback
Yeah.
stuff.
And while making that movie, that's kind of when they were like, we just want to focus on films, and then passed the band to Danny, who then was
Gotcha.
like, well, I like this synthesizer new wave stuff that's happening. But yes, the Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo is very much what that stage show was. So it's like costumes and like explosions and like chaos for like a minute and a half.
On the Gong Show right away, the thing I love is that the very first configuration of the band is a piano player and an accordion player and a drummer. But then as soon as they start playing, a horn section comes out and there's someone dressed as a dinosaur is marching across the stage. And they're definitely playing a piece of music, but it's pretty hard to track what's going on. It's just this insane visual experience. And they don't get gonged. They actually get to play their entire song and get judged. They get judged at the end by Buddy Hackett, Sherry Lewis, and Bill Bixby, who all love them.
Yeah.
And they win that episode of The Gong Show. And my favorite part is at the very end, they're like, congratulations, you're the winners. And they get handed a check for $516.32. I don't know enough about The Gong Show to know why that amount of money is what was given to them. But boy, did that tickle me that was the big
just
prize.
split across all 30 of them.
I know, just all 30 people. Like, ooh, that's tough. Even back then.
My other favorite, if you're going to take the time to watch that minute video, I do also just for shits and giggles, my other favorite Gong Show moment. Look up Green Jello performing on the Gong Show.
Ooh, I haven't seen
Oh,
that.
God, I have not seen that.
Yeah, their intention was literally to just get gonged. They're like,
Yeah.
we just want to be on television. So they do Rock and Roll Pumpkin, and they get maybe 30 seconds into the song before they get gonged, but it's the faces that they have of complete utter disbelief. It's like picture perfect acting where they all just look like, how could we not be the people that made it?
I did see, apparently, Danny Elfman said somewhere, I read this online, that he was pretty disappointed that they didn't get gonged. Like, I think he was hoping, because it was kind of like you win either way on that. Like, if you got gonged,
get
it meant you were
exposure.
so insane. Like, that was a badge of honor in and of itself. So
That's the short story to Oingo Boingo.
Well,
But
yeah.
yes.
So that point about the two phases of the band starting with that vaudeville thing, that's how you end up with a lineup where, if you look at the chronology of it, you have horn players who were in it for longer than Danny Elfman and Steve Bartek, the leaders of the band, that predate them
crazy,
by 3
yeah.
years or whatever. Guys like Sluggo, their saxophonist, and other guys who were in the band for 3 years longer than the people who are the band. Atypical. But also, they have this really similar both origin story and career trajectory to the guys in Devo. Because you have this brother relationship where one guy starts it and the other guy takes it over. And it's the same time period. And then you have this same, career trajectory of having this wildly popular in this niche sort of way new wave band that then the primary composer or composers go on to have this film scoring career in a big way. And it is sort of this inverse thing where Oingo Boingo is the less popular band between the two, but Danny Elfman is the more accomplished film composer later on. Not to knock Mark Mothersbaugh, who did some great work with
no, but Danny Elfman is certainly has a more name recognition than Mark Mothersbaugh. That's for sure.
Mothersbaugh did great stuff with Wes Anderson. Royal Tenenbaums. He composed all those great little string.
Oh yeah, no,
pieces
he's
and things like
fantastic.
that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very
But
successful.
His rendition of "Hey Jude" that kicks off Royal Tenenbaums is genuinely my favorite performance of "Hey Jude." Like, I think it's great.
Don't
as
get me
his
started
little-
on "Hey Jude."
I say it's more of a testament to how huge Danny Elfman is. That Mark Mothersbaugh, by comparison, is nothing.
Oh my god! You guys probably there was a chance of getting him as a guest.
Not anymore.
And
Not anymore. Also, I forgot. I'm sorry.
Putting all
looking
my
at the
energy
Danny
into
Elfman.
getting Danny Elfman as a guest.
We listed all of the Danny Elfman stuff, and I forgot to mention, of course, the man who did the music for the 50 Shades of Grey franchise as well.
There you go. Exactly. This is where I'm focusing my energy. And I mean, we're getting there anyway, but Al performed with Danny Elfman only like a year and a half ago. They did a stage production of The Nightmare Before Christmas, which Danny Elfman also wrote. I don't know if I mentioned that.
And he's the singing voice of Jack Skellington.
And he is the singing voice of Jack Skellington. And Al came out and they did a stage production, and Al sang and performed as part of the show. And there's I think there's a bunch of YouTube clips of it, but you can watch a fantastic video of them singing Kidnap the Sandy Claus. And it is Danny Elfman, Weird Al, and Paul Rubens. And it is wonderful.
Is this the part of the show where we're going to talk about how we should uncancel Paul Rubens?
I think that the world has already gotten.
I think it just sort of happened on its own, right?
It was. Yeah. There has never been a more like frustrating scenario where it's like, look, was his dick out? Probably. Was his dick out in a porno theater? Like, I think we can slow the roll a little bit here.
It does seem
It seems like one of those rare places where that is quite possibly
expected.
Maybe not literally allowed, but socially allowed.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine someone having too legitimate an objection. But it was also at a time, of course, he was hosting a children's program. So
yeah, that didn't help things.
It did not help at that point. We're here on this show to uncancel people.
Yeah, that's actually the low-key secret.
This is just the first one. Stay tuned next week,
Louis,
to see who else we're going to exonerate publicly forever. Done deal.
It gets increasingly worse. Stay tuned. The OJ episode is coming up very soon.
Thank you for watching. This will be our last episode.
Guys, I just think that Pol Pot did nothing wrong.
Please don't take us seriously, listeners.
Anyway, back to this song. It's a great segue into talking about this wonderful love song that Al wrote to
I think it is a great love song. No, I
actually think it is too.
Point, I think if you were to just tweak a couple of lyrics, it's just an abstract, fun, but honest song in a lot of ways, you know? And other artists could take 90% of that lyrical content and turn it into something that is received in a completely earnest way, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a great sort of middle ground here because the lyrics are absurd enough that on the surface you could just laugh at them. Like there are some great hilarious phrases. I especially love, like, looking at the lyrics for this song again, I love the line, when I'm with you, I don't know whether I should study neurosurgery or go to see the Care Bears movie.
That's my least favorite.
That's your least favorite line?
I'm like on board for the first half. This isn't, I just must have an aversion to Care Bears because it's that the Care Bears movie part. I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a reason.
Okay, so
Care Bears were
we're
important to me.
uncanceling Paul Rubens, but we are canceling Care
Problematic.
Bears.
No, can't stand for that. Nope. Care Bears, the sequel is very important to me.
I got to tell you, I have no opinion on the Care Bears.
I have some strong opinions on the Care Bears.
All right,
No, so the fun fact with the Care Bears movie, just a side note, that movie outperformed whatever Disney had released that same year, and that was like what made them realize that maybe they needed to put more focus on advertising it, because it was right where they were like trying to like shove the animation team out and like I think it was Oliver and Company or something, or Great Mouse Detective. Great Mouse Detective underperformed to the Care Bears movie.
Wow.
And they were like, oh no, we're losing our footing as Disney if the Care Bears are beating us out in the box
I do have
office.
opinions about the Great Mouse Detective. I enjoyed that.
It's fantastic and underrated, yes.
Underrated.
I have one other trivia fact about the Care Bears movie.
Oh my God.
Is, I didn't know that, but I did know that that is the movie that Paul Rubens was watching in the theater.
Oh no!
Yeah.
You're making it worse. You've re-canceled him.
None of this is usable. This is Matt's hardest editing job ever.
No. This is going to be great, though, because we can this will be that, just don't edit it. Just do a different guest, do it over. But when the show's popular, when the show's huge,
The long lost episode.
I'll take
Here's what, yeah.
the screen recording that I'm taking right now. I'm going to put that out.
We're
myself.
gonna use this episode to get Danny Elfman on the show to talk about this track. That's it. That's what we're gonna do.
Finally.
So if you're hearing this, you're Danny Elfman.
Also, Phil, I think you
The following podcast is for Danny Elfman only.
Yes. If you're not Danny Elfman, please turn it down. Skip.
Can we add that, Matthew? Can we put that in the beginning? Just a
Yeah,
warning,
absolutely. Of
just,
course
you
we
know.
can. Of course we can. That's
Following
no problem at all.
podcast is for Danny Elfman only.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
This might be the most tangential episode we've ever done, but I would just say I was so surprised, and I guess, Matt, you've backed this up. I was stunned that when doing research for this episode to find that people did not like this song. I did not think that was the thing. I didn't realize that this was a divisive track.
But I think you're right that it's a lack of understanding of the actual homage that it's playing.
It might be. And, again, I don't want to everyone's allowed to have their own opinion about it. If it just doesn't do it for you, then that's totally fine, of course. But I'm surprised that, and my assumption is that it's just Oingo Boingo is not a reference that many people know. But if you do sort of like this song and don't know Oingo Boingo, then as Phil just pointed out, the Nothing to Fear album is the closest representation to this sound-wise that you can get. But also a lot of it, like you also mentioned, Only a Lad, which is a great, great record. Oingo Boingo have a lot of super solid records from basically anything they put out in the 80s, even into the early 90s was really, really enjoyable. I think. And I think it's very much like Devo, like Talking Heads, like the B-52s. We've talked about this before. Bands that have a very particular aesthetic that you can tell Al is really drawn to. He likes bands that manage to sound different and unique in some very specific way. And Oingo Boingo definitely, considering that they are a new wave band like many others, they have quirks and weird little qualities to them that you just feel like are only theirs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also worth noting that he's paying an homage to an era of Oingo Boingo from the early 80s. Mm-hmm. While this is the late 80s that this album's coming out. And for most people, their connection with Oingo Boingo is way more reserved. It's like Dead Man's Party and Goodbye, Goodbye, Goodbye from Fast Times or Weird Science. Those songs are not nearly as chaotic as the reference point that Al's pulling. So
interestingly,
even if you knew Oingo Boingo, if you knew Oingo Boingo as a radio band, you would not hear this song and be like, oh, this is Oingo Boingo that he's doing homage
That's
to.
funny because that's similar to what he did with the B-52s, totally. As I just mentioned. When he does Mr. Popeil is definitely more of an old B-52s reference than what they were putting out at the time. That would have been in 3D was earlier 80s, but that was the point where they were doing stuff more like Love Shack.
Well, Love Shack's 90s.
Love Shack's 90s.
Love Shack's 90s. So he would have been kind of on point with that one because at that point they would have had Rock Lobster in 78 and Private Idaho would have been 80, 81. But Love Shack is 89, 90. Yeah.
Because I know Rock Lobster predates it. I always think that Popeil has the most in common with that track with Rock Lobster, but you're right. Private Idaho is also in there. It's definitely in that
6
same
years
kind of
after
vibe.
both of those singles almost. So
there you go.
Yeah.
I think that Popeil, let's make it a Popeil episode now. It has the punkier production sounds of that early B-52 that I generally connect with the most, though, which is part of what makes it so fun for me.
True.
Yeah.
True.
But circling back to this song, there was one point I was thinking, which was just that this is one of those great style parodies insofar as it's a real look into Al's personal taste and the music he likes, and like you said, the reverence he has for these bands that have a very specific style of production, of arrangement, of songwriting. And also I think the fact that it's not especially timely, he's doing this album to sort of Oingo Boingo sound 8-9 years too late for that to be what people think of. He's just doing this for himself. That is what that says to me.
Yeah, that goes along with what I was talking about with the B-52s. That's the much better way to say that, which is it's more about something that's just important to him that he's choosing to do at this moment where he has the time. Side note, I just have to point out, Love Shack came out in 89. I had to double check just because I was like, did that really come out in the 90s? That was just exploding my brain. 89,
Yeah,
very
sorry,
close.
89,
and definitely,
very
no,
close.
and the years, you're absolutely right. He definitely wasn't referencing it. It was years before that. But still, I just had to, I couldn't accept that Love Shack came out in the 90s.
All I remember is because Rome was on that same album and was like in so many car commercials in the 90s.
Right, yeah, that's true.
But the other thing that I think is worth analyzing also is we're looking at this through the lens of, well, in 1988 people would know Oingo Boingo, right? But the reality is, on this call, there are 3 people who probably didn't discover Al until the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
So by the time we're going back in time, the reference point for Oingo Boingo is even less. And you have to imagine there's a huge chunk of Al fans that is almost every person that we've had on this show so far is in our age demographic.
Yeah.
Which means that unless they were the music nerds that the 3 of us clearly are, they don't really give a fuck about who Oingo Boingo is. So they're just listening
that's what's
to
interesting. That's why I
lens.
wanted to like go over it
Yeah.
as well too. It's funny because again, like for me, I heard this, and as you said as well, Phil, when I heard this song, I was like, oh, I love this aesthetic that he's going for. And I didn't know who Oingo Boingo was. I just thought like the sound of this song was so interesting and chaotic, and like it spoke to me without the Oingo Boingo reference. I can appreciate that some people just found it jarring and not fun for the same reasons.
Through a certain lens, this song could be very irritating, though.
Yeah,
you know what I
sure.
mean. Like if you think about like the like do 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 like playing over and over and over again, the weird like wah noise every once in a while,
Sure.
or just the chorus being over and over and over again, him just yelling, "You make me, that's what you do to me." Like I could see this being. I could understand why someone would hear this and feel like it's nails on a chalkboard in their brain, like that it's just too fucking much.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm all in. I'm just like,
no.
who would hate that much mallet percussion? That's insane.
I would strongly encourage people, I mean, as we're sort of narrowing in on that, I would encourage people, if you have not heard this song in a while, if you remember it not fondly, I would encourage a re-listen. I think this is, I mean, I guess revealing my hand a little bit now as we approach ranking time, but like I think this is great. I really do. I think it's a really well-written song. I think as a style parody, it is as good as most of his best. But I also feel like you could probably still appreciate it whether you know the parody or not. But often knowing the style parody and then revisiting his gives you a better appreciation for just how unbelievably good his band is at making these tracks. Like it's really, it hits all the marks, especially of that record. Yeah.
And Phil, you brought it up once before, but I will repeat it. Like Jim West's little guitar solo in this is like perfect.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I've had issues. No, I haven't had issues, but I've had moments with the guitar stuff at other moments in Al's career where I went, that's not really the exact vibe of what I think that person's guitar solos sound like, but it fits the song, you know? And also, just talking about that in a broader sense than just guitar or style or sounds or stuff, I think this is a good example of an Al song where he's not really going... There's a specific moment that I want a timestamp I want to reference, but throughout the song, he's not really going for a vocal impression of Danny Elfman. To me, when I listen to it, the rhythmic style and stuff like that, he does go for, you know, with the do-do-do-do-do to me and stuff like that. But overall, his vocal style is his own. It's what I hear as his sort of home base vocally, except at 2 points, and the first one's around like a minute and 40, he does the most mind-blowingly perfect, and this is my favorite moment in the whole song, the most mind-blowingly perfect vocal impression of an Elfman guttural yell with a bunch of growl to it, with "That's what you do to me."
That's what you do to me. That's what you do to me.
And then he goes back to singing like Al. But I love that, and I love how this almost feels like Al giving himself a chance to be the singer of Oingo Boingo rather than to do an impression of the singer.
I like that. That's a really good observation, because in most of these cases, like if we're going to talk about the B-52s, he's clearly doing Fred Schneider. And if we're talking about Dare to Be Stupid, he's clearly doing Mark Mothers, but he's
100%,
definitely
yeah.
singing like these people.
Dog Eat Dog, total Byrne impression.
Dog Eat Dog definitely has David Byrne in it. You're right, but this definitely is sung more like just a Weird Al original.
Yes,
than,
like Everything You Know Is Wrong
an
is such a
impression.
TMBG song compositionally, but vocal style, no, not at all.
Sings at his own voice. Yeah, it's
I
true.
think that this might be where that starts to happen more.
Yeah.
I feel like as we look into as we move on from Even Worse, I think that Al, after this album, especially because how successful it was and the fact that the originals got so much critical praise, I'm wondering if we're going to start to find that he does way less vocal impressions of the artists from this point on, and like is way more confident in like, no, this is a Weird Al song. Like, this is how Weird Al will sing this song.
Yeah.
I love that though.
Oh, I do too. No, I think that's great. Because again, at a certain point, it's like, if you want to do that with certain like some people have, like, okay, you're going to do a B-52 song and you want to do a Fred Schneider impression, like that's part of. I get
You need
that
it,
to
yeah.
do a B-52's pastiche and not sing like that is almost
That'd be
impossible.
insane.
Yeah.
It's not going to track. Yeah. So you have to go for that element. But yeah, no, moving forward, it opens the door for him in such a big way that he can feel like he can just, like you said, I love that way of putting it, Phil, like that he gets to be the singer of this band that he
100%.
loves. That's a great way to look at it. I think that's awesome. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Matt, I'm curious so badly, where are you putting this on your list?
You know, it's funny. I'm now looking at my list and I'm just staring at, because we kept talking about Mr. Popeil, and I'm just looking at where Mr. Popeil is on this list and how I'm going to think about this in comparison to that. And I'm going to put this a little bit below that, just a little.
Okay.
And I'm going to put this in between. I'm going to put this just below Midnight Star and just above Christmas at Ground Zero.
Okay, fair spot. I actually think I'm going to go higher than you on this one.
Do it.
I think I'm actually going to put this between This Is the Life and Dog Eat Dog. Just, I don't know, man.
That's
I love
top
it.
5. You just put it in
Yeah,
the top 5. We were just
that's
talking
top
about
5.
people like ranking this song. So like, is this a top 5 or is this a bottom 5?
Yeah, no, it's a top 5 for me. Now, Phil, I'm not sure if you have access to your email, but I sent you a screenshot.
All right.
You get to do some ranking as well. So we have an ongoing guest rankings, which are completely nonsensical because there's no rhyme or reason to it. But you get to look at that list and you get to tell us where You Make Me ends up on that list. And added bonus, you can move around one song.
I love all of these, or most of them at least, but I don't love this order at all. So, because there's songs I like that I wouldn't place You Make Me above, that are further down the list too. Okay, so I'm dropping Yoda
Where are you putting Yoda?
at the bottom.
All the way at the bottom?
Yeah.
Worse than Living with a Hernia?
Oh, I love Living with a Hernia.
Okay, that is chaos, but
Yeah.
I'll take it. Not in the photo, not photographed, is actually below Living with a Hernia, is Girls Just Want to Have Lunch. Are you putting Yoda below that as well?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Okay. All right, just making sure.
I
All right,
love
and
that.
then-
That's one of my favorite ranking moves that I have heard so far. That
so
makes me
you got
very
one
happy.
more minute, and then You Make Me.
Yeah, and I think I genuinely I'm not changing my placement. I think I like You Make Me better than One More Minute, but One More is fantastic, and
Yeah.
they do belong together as his 2 love songs.
Yeah,
2 wonderful love songs. So true.
both
So
track
true.
4. That seems to be his love song
Yeah.
spot on the albums, maybe. We'll have to look into that.
I want to point out one more thing about this song that I think is interesting. So Al brought back You Make Me in 2013 when he was doing the Alpocalypse tour, and he was playing it on that tour for the first time in forever, like since this record came out, but then didn't bring it back for the Vanity tour. He didn't play it once on the Vanity tour, which is really interesting to me. And I wonder why.
Did he tour on it a lot in general, though, over many years, or no?
Not really. No. If you look at the list of like so in 2013 when he was doing the Alpocalypse tour and 2012, he basically played it every night of those runs. And then it popped up periodically. Oh, actually, you know what's interesting? Okay, when this record first came out, he didn't play it. The very first time he ever played this song live was in 2010, according to Setlist FM.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's strange.
So at the time this album came out, I guess he considered it a deep cut. We know that he is, the originals often get neglected when he, especially as he's building up a repertoire of parodies that are going to feel essential to play live. So this got dismissed when the record came out, and then he started to do it periodically on tours into the early 2000s. And maybe he just felt like he had done it enough at that point that he didn't want to include it in the Vanity Tour.
I'm going to choose to believe that touring so heavy on it leading up to the Vanity Tour was the inception of the Vanity Tour. That like when getting ready, when doing tour prep for which tour did he do it for? He did it for Alpocalypse.
Alpocalypse,
okay,
yeah.
So when he was prepping for that, he was like, you know what? I've wanted to do this one. It's been hard to I'm putting it in, for me.
Yeah.
And then he enjoyed that so much that he's like, I'm going to do a whole tour like that.
Do 2 full tours like that. I think that I
don't know if he
legitimately
decided
believe
that at the same time, though. I don't know if he went, I'm going to do
No,
2 tours like this.
I think that it is possible that we never see the traditional Al Yankovic show come back. I think that he's having so much success on these Vanity tours.
I mean, even if he does, we've said this before, but I do think even if he does do a regular, quote unquote, regular tour again, the last regular tour he did was the Strings tour with the orchestras. And that still had a lot less of the old school costume changes, the video production. He used to have this almost every song he did had a wardrobe change.
Yeah. It was insane. I mean,
was
I only got to see that
intense.
once, but we were both there, Matthew, even though we weren't friends yet.
We see that here we go. Now we're really putting a bow on this episode. Phil and I, the first Weird Al show we both saw was together, but not together because we were just happened to be in the same place at Westbury Music Fair. That was Running with Scissors tour. Am I right about that?
Absolutely.
Yes, Running with Scissors. It was great, and we talked about it after the fact. But we didn't know each other then. I got invited to that show by the mom of a kid I was babysitting.
Oh,
her husband couldn't go, so I went with this kid I was babysitting and his mom, and then me to see Weird Al. It was like a last minute, like, we have an extra ticket. Do you want to come? And I was like, yes.
It's actually
and it was great. One of the first shows I ever saw.
I don't really know you, Phil, one way or the other, but I'd like to imagine that you're wearing a very Weird Al-like shirt in honor of this recording.
Could be.
I don't know if that's your usual style, but
I mean, I own it.
It is your usual.
No, you're right. It's not my usual style. This is a rental. So, guys, we gotta hurry up because I'm paying by the hour and I'm about to go over the hump. So
man,
that's true. That's true.
The next hour, you pay a premium then.
I did. I was going through, and I only just had this thought. I didn't prepare this, but it'll seem like it. So forget that I just said that and cut that out. But I was recently going through my old cassettes, and I found my first Weird Al cassette, which I had my mom take me to.
There's the Food album,
Take me to the wall, and I chose this, and I used my parents' hard-earned money to buy this cassette tape in 1997 or something. I don't know, but that's the first thing of his that I went and bought. Prior to that, it was taking a blank cassette to a friend's house.
Yeah, I think my first true Al anything was someone made me a cassette copy of Bad Hair Day. So
I got given a copy of Bad Hair Day by my parents I think for completing the 4th grade.
Why? Not everyone does it.
That's true. That's true. I did deserve a lot of praise.
My first parental advisory sticker was album was a gift for finishing 5th grade. He said, "You're now a boy. You're going to middle school." And I said, "I would like that Sublime self-titled."
That's a young music nerd's bar mitzvah. Actually, is that you get your first parental advisory sticker in 5th grade?
Yeah,
it's traditional.
Well, Phil, it has been a blast. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about all the faults that you found and You Make Me while listening to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of wish that you had.
Twist.
I kind of wish that you hadn't discovered the correct reference points, and you came on this just being like, We have yet to have a guest on this show who's just like outwardly
I
hostile.
thought about that.
Who's like,
I
I
would-
picked this song because it sucks.
I would love someone to be like, I picked this because it's my least favorite Al Yankovic.
I know that hasn't happened yet. I'm ready for it. That when someone does do that, I'm ready to.
It'll
take
be a
them
repeat
down.
guest. I will put money down that it will be one of the guests, like second, third, or fourth time on the show. They'll be like, you know what? I think it's time.
No,
to
this
change
is.
it up a bit.
I want someone to come on like that, and I want that person to be Danny Elfman. Again, Danny
Yeah,
Elfman.
Danny, you heard
we
the
know-
the
Danny
disclaimer at
Elfman-
the front of the episode.
We know you're listening, Danny. We can't wait for you to come on and tell us all the bad things about this song that Phil almost said, but then
It's his
changed
turn.
his mind.
And also,
about.
honestly, I'm just angling to bring up the problematic content so that you get fewer guests, and I get invited back, and I can trash all of these songs that
There you go. Yeah. Phil and I play in a band together called Grim All Day, which is not the most Weird Al similar group that exists, but I would recommend checking out. I'm very proud of it. And Phil does all kinds of other things, and he's got a website you can check out. It's www.cpz.fyi. Thank you for joining us, Phil.
ladies and gentlemen, the preceding podcast is for Danny Elfman only.
Thank you for your service.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.